Hello, everyone. I'm Derek. This is the second podcast on the Derek's Derek channel, where I discuss politics, important events, or anything else that matters. I talked about the pandemic in 2020 for 20 minutes straight in the last podcast, so I'm not going to talk about those things again, unless something major happens that needs addressing. I've said all I wanted to about that year, so I'm not going to repeat myself here. Just know that every day we wake up, we are one step closer to normality. I'm a bit more comfortable talking and doing this now. I wouldn't say I'm fully used to this, but now I've finally dipped my toes into the water, so I have some experience rather than none. And as I make more podcasts and get better, I'll touch on more serious topics as well. This podcast is a bit harder to write for me. It takes about a month for me to gather and write down all my thoughts for a video like this, but I've forced myself to make another one within a week. These things are like writing a college essay, it's kinda hard. I still write these kind of things because young activist Greta Thunberg hasn't been talked about for almost a year now in America, so I want to ensure the voice of youth, so to say, doesn't go away. Posting 45 things on an Instagram story, like other people I know do, isn't going to fill that gap. While it does raise awareness like this podcast does, it fails to go into depth and explain why there's a problem, who is responsible, or possible solutions. There's only so much that can be said with one post. For this podcast, I was considering writing about climate change because it is a new year and cleaning the planet could be the world's New Year's resolution in a way. But the problem with that is that there's isn't much to talk about at all. It's just climate change is bad. It is very important, don't get me wrong, because it's the planet we live on that's at stake. But I think there's more than enough attention to the problem. It's just up to big corporations to make the decisions to cut down on emissions. But I doubt they watch these videos. It's a popular topic, and everything has been said about it. I always try to keep ideas new on this channel. I wouldn't have started it if I was going to be like everyone else. Though I will say that the effects of climate change are becoming more and more severe, such that not only scientists are taking note, but me as well. It is January 13 as of now, and the temperature in California is at a comfortable 66 degrees Fahrenheit. It feels warmer than it sounds. This seems good at first, but taking into account the current date and season, it should be about 30 degrees and pouring rain right now. There's been so little days of rain I could probably count them on one hand. And I remember last year when the northeast US reached insanely low temperatures in places like Wisconsin and Michigan. That happened in February, so we could have a repeat of that this year. 2021 actually started off quite normal. It was just a daily routine of quarantine, so there's loads to talk about in the real world. I don't want to talk about small town issues because there's no message or much to learn about in incidents like those. There's been a little celebrity law drama with Kim and Kanye divorcing, but I really don't want to talk about that either because this podcast is supposed to be as educational as possible, and there's not much education to be found in celebrity affairs. Thankfully, on January 6th, something happened, and now I have something to talk about. This discussion worthy thing was the US Capitol raid. I'm a bit late to the party. It's been about a week since then, but it takes me longer than it should to write and record these. About the raid, I expected there to be a protest because there are always rumors about voting fraud and whatnot during the election, which people wouldn't be too happy about. But what I didn't expect at all was to see people successfully break into the Capitol. It was so odd to wake up and see that ordinary people like me broke, no, not like I wasn't there, but like the same status as me broke into the Capitol that day with little to no resistance from security. Only 5 deaths resulted when I expected there to be more, because the U.S. Capitol was under attack. Deaths aren't a good thing, but because there was such a low amount for such an important place, I feel like it was more of a symbol than an attack. The people sitting in the senators' seats, waving Confederate flags, and all of that happening in the capital of all places, it says a lot about the current state of America. We are again at an odd turning point. On January 20, Trump announced that he will be the first president since Andrew Jackson to not attend an inauguration for the next president. People are finally to cement their beliefs that Trump is the next Hitler and the worst president of the United States. Thing is about this, I think America's system of checks and balances won't allow a president to be bad, or at least do bad things. If one branch, Trump being part of the executive, tries to pass a bad law or act, such as building the Mexican American Wall, the other branches of government, the judicial and legislative, won't let that bad law pass. Each branch holds about equal power, and one branch doesn't have enough influence to completely destroy the country, contrary to many's beliefs. This is why Trump got impeached 2 times, because the other branches took action for his involvement in the White House raid. I'm still embarrassed that our president acts like this, but Trump is definitely not on par with people like Hitler. Keep in mind, I'm trying to stay away from bias here. I almost never 100% support somebody, or even 100% don't support somebody. The only people I maybe 100% support are Gandhi or MLK, but those are only 2 people out of billions of people and hundreds of politicians. Everybody has seen good and bad things. If you hate or love Trump, that is okay, because these opinions are usually backed by research and feelings, both very important in the government. People with different backgrounds and personalities will always almost have different opinions about other people. The White House raid isn't really like, it can't always be a bad thing. Our very country was founded because of a revolution, after all. We have the right not only to assembly, but also to overthrow a corrupt government. But the thing is, there was not enough people or action taken to make any change that day. If enough people felt bad about the election, then Trump would have gotten a second term after the Capitol was destroyed. Granted, he wasn't behind the attack, because that would be like legal. But other than that, Congress would know how many people were affected by his loss and decide to make changes to the election. But the loss of the election was too small and too petty a problem that nothing happened after that day that benefited America. I allow revolutions, but they have to be with a cause. What I will not condone, however, is bringing a Confederate flag into the Capitol, which many did. We spent decades fighting slavery and exercising freedom, and it's awful that it's still alive and well in America, and of all places in the Capitol, where people are trying to bend the rules and say freedom of expression allows people to do as they please. But waving around a Confederate flag is just unethical in all ways. We've worked so hard to eliminate these discriminatory actions and try to move toward better futures where equality is the norm, and these guys are trying to undo the progress, which I hate. I'm not, yeah. No matter how bad of a person you are, you're probably going to still have people who support you. Trump will have supporters almost no matter what he does. This is because he did good things like make all-time low employment rates in 2019, made peace with North Korea, and many other things that would make one considered a good president. Having people who support you doesn't mean you're always a good person or leader, because Hitler had almost all of Germany on his side, supporting his genocide. It's unlikely 90% of Germany's civilians were evil murderers. He was just good at manipulating them into believing certain things. This is happening in America as well, because you only know what you're exposed to. Common misconception, for an example, is that women are worse drivers than men. I'm taking a driving course right now, and I just learned that teen males account for significantly more crash rates than teen females. The reason why we probably think the opposite is because females are always on social media, so the crashes are recorded and talked about, while men would probably be ashamed by the mistake and try to keep it a secret. According to the CDC, male drivers account for 19 billion total costs in car accidents, while females only account for 7 billion each year. It's the same with media news. We only know what we're told, so we can believe false things. What most consumers like me see is just shadows of people. The thing is, shadows are a trick. A small person can have a large shadow, and a big person can have a small shadow. It all depends on where the light shines. The light, of course, in this scenario, is the media, which tells people what they want to hear, can shine a light as bright or as dim as they want it to. By studying only one source, it is almost impossible to fully know and understand a situation or person. That is why I try to stay away from opinionated statements when I'm talking here. I more just talk about lessons. Because I don't have time to view 59 different websites and books to understand the events in the world right now. But sadly, other people will share their naive opinions, which are distortions of the shadows the media casts. So no, Trump isn't not anywhere near the next Hitler. Maybe not even the worst president. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not one to speak. Because we had people like James Buchanan and Andrew Jackson who devoted their terms to dividing the country and enforcing slavery. The media just wants to say Trump has the worst because they want to feel special and make these past 4 years special. But they've forgotten the rocky past of America and the rest of the world when times were worse. It's like the saying, strong men create good times create weak men weak men create bad times, and bad times create strong men. It's a cycle. The strong men in this scenario would be the founding fathers of America. They may not have been the best of people, but you can't deny they were strong enough to get a lot done. These people would be like George Washington, who established the country from scratch, major players in the Constitution like James Madison, and Lincoln, who banned slavery. The good times created by these strong men would probably be the Industrial Revolution. Most of the country became comfortable enough to free ourselves from government and survival issues. However, inventors rose from this era, bringing forth new housing, cars, and a new economy, and so on. This period of industrialization was good overall because America was moving forward as a country, though it did have some rough steps. The good times reached their peaks in the 2000s with the entry of the digital age. Media exposure has been mass producing these weak men who were influenced by the media to believe things they shouldn't believe. There wasn't any questions for almost a decade in the 2000s, so the country didn't need strong men, because when everyone is comfortable, there's no need for amazing governors, because the country isn't changing. The hard times are finally here now, because America is in a bad state. When the bad times get bad enough, people feel the need to fix their society. This is where the strong men come in, who take action to adapt to their rough conditions and rebuild their broken civilization. My goal is to become one of these strong men who make changes for the better. In history class, I'm learning about the Harlem Renaissance. It was a movement in the 1920s New York for African American rights. In that era, people did many good things. Revolutionary books and poems were written, and the Jazz Age began, changing the face of music forever. For the most part, African Americans were looking forward to receiving the rights and respect they deserved. However, this one activist by the name of Marcus Garvey, instead of encouraging desegregation and happiness for both sides, tried to get blacks to destroy and take over the American government and move back to Jamaica. This is like going backwards against what most people wanted because they wanted to desegregate, but he wanted to, take over, like enslave white people, which is unethical. This man gave the movement a bad reputation. Even other activists hated him for this, such as Webb Du Bois. I don't know if I'm saying that right. This goes to show that one extreme activist does not represent an entire movement. This goes for both sides, BLM and the Capitol riot. Marcus Garvey's grandson, Julius Garvey, even tried to get Obama to pardon his father in 2016. I wasn't fond of this idea because while Marcus Garvey had the right ideas, his execution was too violent and unnecessary to be praised. Forgiving and forgetting what Garvey did would make violence legal in the eyes of the people and the government. Like I said in my last podcast, America cannot afford to normalize these things because then all the progress we made towards equality would slowly be diminished. Now, what do I think will happen in the future? Will there be a revolution, a change in how presidents are elected, or will life and the flow of America continue as if this event never happened in the first place? So far, everything is pretty much going on as normal. People sitting in Capitol seats and waving flags won't change how the election went. The amount of people negatively affected by the election was so low in comparison to people who were okay with the result. So the government won't feel like changing anything. However, the oddest thing is happening right now. Trump is getting banned from several social media sites such as Twitter and Facebook. I just realized the media is getting rid of one of the most important rules of this country: freedom of speech. I don't care how bad of a person you think Trump is, freedom of speech is important, especially due to a former president of all things. A former president needs to be able to share his opinions because he has a literal army of followers, as shown by the White House raid. Silencing the man all these people listen to will definitely not solve the problem. Let me make something clear. A disagreement in this country is not a crisis. That's a very common misconception. People were going to be unhappy with the results of the election no matter who won. What is important to make every single person out of 300 million people happy, or impossible to make every single person out of 300 million people happy. Still, a president's job is to keep as many people happy while still keeping the country running at the same time. So, no matter who is president, our job as citizens is to make the best, is to make do with the results. If enough people feel the need to overthrow the government, they will. But the Capitol was not attacked. It was a pathetic and petty whine from sore losers who don't understand how a country works. The Capitol riot was nowhere near the level of the Revolutionary War because the problem isn't as big. We have rights and freedom now. The media simply makes small mistakes into big ones, using their shadows, because that means they sell more ads. So, in conclusion, this event was but a minor bump in America's history. Thank you for listening.